Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And what a good day to talk about the offensive line. Some action shots of Evan Neal in this offensive group in OTAs, the fourth day today on Monday. But today we want to specifically focus on former Indianapolis Colts and Seattle Seahawks guard Mark Glowinski. I told Anthony before the show, guy, every time I say Mark Glowinski, I think Monica Lewinsky, and he thinks Mike Wazowski. So his name is very, very familiar. But I will say this is a huge upgrade for the Giants, right? We know what Will Hernandez offered, the bully concept, really slow with his feet, could not handle the stunts. Putting him next to Nate Solder was like having a line at Trader Joe's, just come on through, get your stuff. Let's keep going here. Sacks for sale. And now we have Mark Glowinski and Nate Solder, which I have to say seems to be a much better group. And I'm excited to dive into Mark Glowinski, what he's bringing to this team, how well he performed during the second half of the 2021 season, Anthony. Before we do, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really good, and I really like Mark Glowinski because of what he provides as a run blocker. We'll get into him and everything about him, but I like Mark Glowinski. You got to keep in mind, this was the Giants' splash signing in free agency this year. They didn't have much money to spend at all. They were in a really bad cap constraint thanks to the mess that Dave Gettleman left behind. Joe Shane kind of picking up the pieces and trying to see what he can do with the money that we had. He goes out there, he gets a solid starting guard in Mark Glowinski, but this was the splash signing, and it was only worth around $6 million per year annually on the salary cap. So, this was the big signing for the Giants, and his total contract was 3 years, under $20 million. But this is a massive upgrade for the Giants. Nevertheless, he might not be an elite guard. It's not one of those Pro Bowl, all-pro level guards that you want to be your splash signing. The Giants couldn't afford a real splash in free agency, so they went out there and they splashed by getting a starter. Now, their other splash was a backup in Tyrod Taylor. Those were kind of the two marquee signings for the Giants in free agency, which just kind of shows the direction that the Giants are moving in. They don't want to be overzealous with their spending in free agency. They really just want to get quality players to help build this roster out. And I think Mark Glowinski is exactly that. He's a quality player. You know what you're getting from him every single day. He's consistent, and he is a good guard to start on the Giants' offensive line.
Absolutely. Look, three years, $20 million. This could end up becoming a steal of a signing. Like you said, the splash signing. We spent a lot of money on guys who have not produced, notably Kenny Golladay. Obviously, Nate Solder was a huge whiff. Hitting on some of these offensive line free agents is going to be the make or break catalyst or factor for Daniel Jones and really whoever plays quarterback for the foreseeable future on this team. And it's about consistency, right? The amount of turnover the Giants offensive line has had over the past couple of years with, Ben Bredesen, Matt Skura, Eric Flowers, going to the right side, then going to Washington. There's been so much turnover. It's time for them to really settle in and figure out who is our long-term solutions on this line. Andrew Thomas obviously seems to be one. Evan Neal, he's here for the next 5 years at least. And then you have, Mark Glowinski was here for 3 years. Now, what is he really good at? Mark Glowinski started last season playing pretty poor football, to say the least. He gave up, a sack and 3 quarterback hits. He gave up 10 hurries in the first 3 games of the season. Week 4 rolls around against Miami. He gives up 2 quarterback hits, 2 hurries, 4 total pressures. Really started off kind of rough. And then something happened in week 9, but it all just clicked, right? Everything just suddenly was like week 9 against the Jets. Great team to give your best game against. Then he goes and plays Jacksonville. He goes and plays Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Houston, New England, Las Vegas. A lot of really, really great teams. And he had some of his best games against Buffalo and Tampa Bay specifically. He didn't give up a sack after week 8. He didn't give up a quarterback hit after week 9. He gave up a couple hurries, but it's okay to give up some hurries. His run blocking grades were phenomenal from week 9, or really week 10 all the way to the end of the season. And he had some elite pass blocking grades as well. Now, the Giants are trying to figure out how can we get that best version of him every single day. He seems to be that dirtbag mentality, as offensive line coach Bobby Johnson mentioned, when he was talking about John Feliciano this week. Dirtbag, he wants that aggressiveness. If you're available, you're getting the reps. He said, we need everybody available. If you're missing time, you're losing an opportunity to learn, grow, and really get a spot on this team. Mark Glowinski, he's very healthy, it seems to be as well. He's played over 1,000 snaps on 3 different occasions in his career. He's played no less than 700 snaps in his last 4 years combined. So the guy's been healthy. He's been consistent. He's been developing and growing. Last year was arguably his best season, coming from phenomenal running team with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. So he's bringing a different type of mentality. And one thing I really like about this signing specifically, is that pairing him with a mauler like Evan Neal. Mark Glowinski is really aggressive, but he's a little bit smaller. He's a little bit thinner. Let's see, he's not like a Evan Neal type of size, 6'4", 310 pounds. So he does have some good size, but pairing him with Evan Neal, I think is going to streamline Evan Neal's growth as well. Having a good guard next to a rookie tackle is always important. That's why I took Andrew Thomas. I mean, I would say Andrew Thomas is an anomaly. I can't believe he developed into the player that he was. But, having a good guard next to Evan Neal is going to promote his growth even more, Anthony. How do you think Mark Glowinski is going to impact this team in the first year as a Giant?
I think it's stability, right? That's the key factor here when you're talking about the signing of Mark Glowinski, because we look at what the Giants had at, for example, left guard last year. Revolving door. Center was a bit of a revolving door too. I mean, how many times do we say, oh, the Giants have a new starting left guard this week? The Giants have a new starting center this week. What if this guy started at center? What if this guy started at left guard? Could Will Hernandez move back to the left side of the offensive line? There was no stability on that offensive line. Everything was a question mark every single week. But I think when you look at Mark Glowinski and what his career trajectory has looked like, he's been consistent. He's played in nearly every single game, every single season. He hasn't had injuries in a while, right? He played really well for the Indianapolis Colts, who have one of the best offensive lines in football. And he was able to consistently go out there, especially in the back half of the season, and be a solid run blocker and a solid contributor opposite of Quentin Nelson as the left guard. So you really look at what Mark Glowinski provided to the Indianapolis Colts, and it was a tremendous amount of value. So why could he not provide that value, or an even greater amount of value, to the Giants' rebuilding offensive line that has had huge holes all across it for years? So really what I'm getting from Mark Glowinski, and I don't want to oversell him or overhype him, he's not Pro Bowl level guard. He's not an all-pro. He's not elite by any means, but he's solid. And the Giants need someone who's solid, who's stable out of position, can consistently give you at least decent football every single week, rather than consistently giving you bad games on a consistent basis, right? That's what we were getting from guys like Will Hernandez, Ben Bredeson, Billy Price, consistent poor performances. Now, at least we can get something consistently average. And I think that's a tremendous upgrade when you're talking about offensive line play. Most offensive lines in the NFL, even the ones for the playoff teams, those offensive lines are average. Average offensive lines are good enough. You just need at least 5 average offensive linemen, which is much easier said than done, because it's really hard to find 5 solid, consistently average players. But I think the Giants identify Mark Glowinski as a guy who can just consistently be an average starter on their offensive line, which is huge. And it's a massive upgrade over the poor performances and the terrible inconsistency that they were getting from their guards in the past.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at Glowinski specifically, the guy is best utilized when you're using him in this natural aggression way. You're extrapolating on his natural aggression. Don't ask him to do overcomplicated things. Ask him and Evan Neal shift the line of scrimmage a yard forward. And then Saquon Barkley's like, well, damn, look at all this space to run now. I think that's how the Giants are going to approach this. Setting a strong running game is really how you open up the passing game, right? If you have teams who are saying, Saquon Barkley's crushing us, man. We gotta allocate another safety, another linebacker. We have to, get guys closer to the line of scrimmage. That really opens up the deeper portions of the field. It opens up the play action, opens up the rollouts, it opens up the end arounds, the jet sweeps, the screen passes. This is how you set the stage for a great passing game, is a really solid attacking running game, an aggressive running game. The Giants now have maulers pretty much at every spot except for left guard. I think that's still up for grabs. I think Azudu could be that mauler there. He's a pretty solid guy. He's very aggressive. But Glowinski and Evan Neal are people movers, right? And I love that term, people movers. They just really feed into that natural aggression and they shift the line of scrimmage. And I really think the Giants are going to be running heavily towards the right side. I mean, it makes most sense. That's kind of what Saquon Barkley, he does best. He really attacks that right side well, but Nate Solder and Will Hernandez were just not cutting it. In like a zone scheme or a pulling kick kind of system, I think that, that's where you're going to see him really open up. I'm very curious, Anthony, if they do run this spread offense, how do they, are they going to just chip with tight ends? How are they going to use their tight ends in a spread offense? Are they going to kind of put like a jumbo slot? Are they going to use them in the line of scrimmage? Like, how do you think that they utilize the tight ends to, benefit the running game, but also kind of incorporate in this spread system?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because you can get really versatile with your tight end usage in a spread offense, because you can use them as that jumbo slot. You can also put them in line. It's like when you're talking about a spread offense, it's kind of similar to what the conversation we had last week when we were saying man heavy defensive scheme is still running man only 40% of the time, right? 60% of the time, they're still running that zone defense. So when you're talking about a spread offense, yeah, we're talking about a lot more empty backfields and a lot more five wide and a lot more, offensive schemes and offensive plays where the tight end is not in line with the offensive line, but that's still probably like 15 to 20% of the time is a high usage, right? That's still not the majority of your game plan. You're going to see the offensive lineman in line and lining up next to the right or left tackle rather frequently. It's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of 11 personnel, meaning the Giants are going to play with one tight end a lot more frequently than they did last year. Last year, the Giants played with a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. They were putting a lot of tight ends on the field. I don't expect them to continue doing that going forward. We might see a lot of 11 and 10 personnel. A lot of situations where there's no tight ends on the field, especially when you take a look at the status of the tight ends on the Giants roster. It's kind of like Daniel Bellinger versus the world right now. That's really all they have out there. So I think you're going to see him used in a variety of ways. You're definitely going to see him line up as a jumbo slot because he's got some athleticism, but you're going to see him in line, and you're going to see some of those elements of the Kansas City Chiefs playbook incorporated to get him involved, where he's going to be kind of catching screen passes from the tight end position because his usage over in college was very similar to what the Chiefs kind of did with Travis Kelce. And they used him on a lot of, moving plays where they got him out in space and they get him with the ball in his hands, because that's where Daniel Bellinger excels, with the run after the catch. So you're going to see him use some screen passes, and you are going to see him utilized as a receiver in the spread offense. But of course, there's going to be times where he's going to have to block, and he is a willing and exceptional blocker from that position as well. So you can line him right up next to Evan Neal, give Evan Neal kind of that buffer since he is a rookie. He's going to have his growing pains. No matter how good of an offensive tackle prospect you are, you will have growing pains in your rookie season in the NFL. Even Rashawn Slater had a couple. He was phenomenal, but he had a couple of moments, right? So that tight end is going to be very useful in a lot of different ways in a spread offense. The spread offense is very important. You want to spread the ball out. You want to create more aerial attack formations, and it's something that the Giants are going to accomplish. It's something that Brian Daboll excelled with when he was coaching the offense for the Buffalo Bills. But you also got to keep in mind, Dawson Knox was a huge part of that offense. He slowly but surely became the favorite red zone target for Josh Allen in that offense. And a lot of that was, yes, he had the ability to line up in the slot receiver position or even out wide and be flexible with his positioning, but he made a huge impact as that inline tight end, especially in the red zone. So don't sleep on the fact that the Giants do need a solid inline tight end, and Daniel Bellinger can absolutely be that guy for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bellinger, and I'm thinking about it in terms of each individual player's strengths really match up with what they're trying to do in terms of expanding the offensive system. I really like what you said, aerial strategies. Like that's how I see them kind of building each individual unit, right? So if you look at Daniel Bellinger, what are his immediate strengths? Run blocking. He's a good blocker. He can get to the second level and really just take bodies out of the equation. And I love that pairing him with a very aggressive mauler mentality that Evan Neal and Mark Glowinski have, that natural aggression, that they're going to slay, absolutely kill in the screen game. You swing that ball up to Kadarius Toney, you swing that ball up to Wan'Dale Robinson, and you have Evan Neal, Mark Glowinski, and Daniel Bellinger just plowing bodies down at the second level and moving the line of scrimmage, giving your playmakers more space and time to make plays. That is what I envision as this Giants offense doing next year. Factor in, you have a Saquon Barkley-like talent who's now running behind a much improved offensive line in terms of run blocking specifically. And you have your downfield threats like the Kenny Gallaudays in the 50-50 ball. You have Kadarius Toney's more than capable of getting downfield. Wan'Dale Robinson, he caught the 16th most deep passes in college football last year from the SEC. Like, we're talking about players who are very good screen pass catchers, very good. We have a very good possession receiver in Kenny Golladay, a number one option. Kadarius Toney, who is an electrifying playmaker when healthy. And then you have Sterling Shepard recovering from his Achilles injury. He should be ready to go at some point early in the season. I personally think that there's a lot of action. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff going on in this offense that we haven't seen before. And Daniel Bellinger is going to play a huge part of that, let alone just the second level blocking he offers. His receiving abilities are super underrated. San Diego State did not utilize him to the most of his capabilities. When you get him running full speed, he's not an agile mover, but his straight line speed is very underrated. He has phenomenal hands. I think he dropped one pass in his entire collegiate career. And like, you're looking at him as a pure prospect. There's a lot left to untap when it comes to Daniel Bellinger, but his blocking specifically on that side of the line, that right side of the football, is going to be a huge benefit for guys like Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and I'll even mention Joe Shane was over there at Buffalo when they found Dawson Knox. They must have seen something similar. Dawson Knox was a mid-round prospect, third-round pick. Daniel Bellinger being a mid-round prospect bodes really well considering the fact that Joe Shane targeted him and he targeted Dawson Knox. He got a lot of credit for that draft selection when he was with Buffalo. So, you're kind of speaking to Daniel Bellinger and this great skill set that he has. And it's similar to something that we saw with Dawson Knox when he was coming out of college. I think that the two of them have similar playing styles. And it's kind of like Joe Shane identified Daniel Bellinger as the Dawson Knox for Brian Dable's offense with the New York Giants. That's how I'm viewing this. And I also, again, knowing how he was used in college, I think that Mike Kafka probably identified him as a guy who could potentially play a role similar to what they did with Travis Kelce. And no, I'm not saying that Daniel Bellinger is the same level of talent as either Dawson Knox or Travis Kelce. I'm saying the skill set that he has can be utilized in similar ways to those two players. The playing style is similar, and that's important when you're trying to make a transition from coaching one team to another, but still installing the basic concepts that made your offensive scheme so excellent for Brian Dable or Mike Kafka.
Yeah, absolutely. But guys, that kind of gives a good breakdown of what we expect from some of these specific players. Daniel Bellinger, of course, we've talked about him many times. I love to continue talking about him because I think he has all the potential in the world, especially with a guy like Andy Bischoff, who is responsible for helping develop Mark Andrews. He's worked in Houston before with some great tight ends. Like, this is a guy you want on your side. And then you look at Bobby Johnson, who wants that aggressive grinder mentality. Hopefully he can get the most out of these guys. I know Anthony created an awesome video the other day speaking about how some of these guys still have PTSD from former regimens. Maybe it's Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, whoever it might be that's left over from the previous guys. But I do like to see that, this group seems to be coming together in terms of their skill set. They have similar attributes, right? Feliciano, Andrew Thomas, Mark Glowinski, and Evan Neal. What do they all have in common? They're freaking aggressive players. They want to put bodies on the ground. They want to pancake guys, right?
And I'll even throw out there, all of those guys that you just mentioned, they're better run blockers than pass blockers. They are great run blockers. So there's a very good chance that the Giants, we're expecting them to start playing a lot more spread offense, a lot more 11 or 10 personnel, and being more pass heavy than they have been in the past, because that's kind of the history that would be indicating the future based on what Mike Kafka and Brian Dable have done in the past, right? But they've brought in a personnel that excels in run blocking. They could kind of just pull the rug out from underneath us and be like, hey, we're actually a smash mouth or run first football team, but our running scheme is much better than what Jason Garrett had implemented because it's not this power gap 2004 Norv Turner. This is more West Coast, outside zone, inside zone, Shanahan playbook, and all that kind of stuff. That's something that we could see, absolutely. Actually, when you take a look at Mark Glowinski and you go back and you look at his free agency best fits entering this year's free agency period, the San Francisco 49ers were listed because he's got that run blocking and he's got that ability to excel in that outside zone and that zone running scheme. So again, taking a look at what the Giants are building here on offense, yeah, I expect them to pass the ball more than they have in the past, but they're also building personnel centered around maximizing the talents of Saquon Barkley. So we could see a bounce back year for him, or if God forbid he gets injured again and there's another running back that has to step in, I think this will be a more efficient running game regardless of who's taking the handoffs.
Right. And you know what? It's kind of weird you say that. This is going to get me on a tangent, but I'm going to try and not do that. But the fact that they've built a line that seems to be so run blocking heavy, like such a run blocking presence, kind of, I guess it like kind of insinuates that maybe they're going to try and limit Daniel Jones making mistakes that way, right? Maybe they're going to try and take some of the pressure off of DJ, really establish the run. Or, you could look at it a different perspective, right? If they establish the run, it's going to allow Daniel Jones to have a lot more man coverage situations or a lot less coverage in the defensive backfield. So therefore, you could say that mistakes are less likely because there's not as many defensive backs back there because they have to allocate more attention to the line of scrimmage. Also, the screen passes, it is no mistake that Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney are both screen pass catching monsters. And basically they're like, Daniel Jones, throw it 2 yards. You can't miss. Get it to these guys in space. Let's get some unbelievable blockers out in front and let them do the work for you. That's called production that you don't have to do anything for. Daniel Jones doesn't have to thread the needle, doesn't have to throw it downfield, doesn't have to try and take a risk. Just freaking throw it to your guy 2 yards away and let him do all the work for you. That's going to give him a lot of production. His numbers are going to look a lot better because of that. And if they do end up moving on and getting a rookie quarterback, it's going to make the system a lot easier to adjust to in addition. So there's benefits to that as well that we'll talk about one day if that time comes. We'll see how it works out, obviously. But guys, hope you enjoyed this video, taking a look at Mark Glowinski, some of these individual players, Daniel Bellinger. And if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, we put a lot of clips throughout the video, so you can check out some of the film there and kind of get an idea of how he plays, his style. Maybe we'll do a little film breakdown in a couple days here, specifically on Glowinski. But as I said before, make sure to have a phenomenal day. Make sure to like and subscribe below, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.